Hey Kipsters, today we're going to learn about a new body system, the respiratory system. In today's lesson, you'll be able to explain the structure and function of the respiratory system. Let's get started. I'm going to show you a quick brain pop clip that shows how the respiratory system works, and then we'll review it on your notes.
Can't do it. Dear Tim and Moby, why do we breathe? From Min. Hey, you're talking about the respiratory system. We have to breathe to live, but I bet most people don't know exactly why. Your body can store up a lot of the nutrients it needs, but it can't store the one thing that you need all the time. An invisible gas called oxygen. Inside your body, oxygen allows all your cells to make energy so they can function properly. Since you can't store it, your body takes it in all the time in a process called breathing. Breathing is the main function of the respiratory system, which in complex animals is responsible for carrying air to the lungs. Here's how it works in humans. Everyone has 2 lungs in their chest. Your lungs are surrounded by your rib cage, and they rest on a dome-shaped muscle called the diaphragm. Every time you take a breath, the diaphragm contracts and moves downward, and your rib cage expands. This causes a drop in air pressure inside your lungs, which the higher pressure air from outside rushes in to equalize. When you inhale, air enters your body through your nose or your mouth. It travels down the trachea or windpipe to your lungs. Inside the lungs, air moves into smaller and smaller passages called bronchial tubes. Eventually, the air spreads to the alveoli. The alveoli are tiny sacs surrounded by blood vessels called capillaries. Oxygen moves through the walls of the alveoli and capillaries and into the blood. Well, the alveoli and capillary walls are only like 1 cell thick, so it's pretty easy. Oh no, there's more. When your lungs take oxygen in, they send carbon dioxide out. Carbon dioxide is a harmful waste gas that you have to get rid of. It's made in your cells and travels through the blood into your heart, which pumps it back into capillaries around your alveoli. Your diaphragm relaxes and moves upward, which deflates your lungs and makes you exhale this used air. And so on. That's breathing. That's pretty close, Moby. Our lungs don't fly around the room or anything, but they do inflate and deflate, just like a balloon. I'd say breathing is pretty important. You want to do all you can to keep your lungs in good working order. Regular exercise helps keep your lungs in shape. And you should steer clear of things that are bad for your lungs, like smoking. Smoking damages your cilia, little hairs inside your bronchial tubes that help remove unwanted matter from the lungs. In the long term, smoking can give you lung cancer and emphysema, a disease that makes it difficult to breathe. Right, and you should avoid air pollution too. And toxic waste. And poisonous gas. I think they get the point.
Okay, so let's go ahead and dig a little bit deeper. You can go back to your notes, and there'll be a place for you to write down a few things into your notes. So, as I said, we want to be able to explain both the structure, meaning what are the organs that are part of the respiratory system, and the function, or its job. So respiration, or breathing, allows us to breathe in and out, to sigh, like, to sing, and to speak as well. So the main function of the respiratory system is allow us to get oxygen in our bodies and to get carbon dioxide, a harmful waste gas, out of our bodies. Go ahead and write this now into your notes. So what does your respiratory system actually look like? You can see from this picture, this is a wax model of the respiratory system. The lungs are on both sides, and then that large muscle that's underneath, called the diaphragm that you saw in the video, is what's pictured in the dark orange color here. Now, this is a real-life example of the lungs. And so this is lungs from the human body system. You can see it's very similar to what you see in the wax model here. But you'll also notice that based on the coloring and just the little small lines that you can see here, that this is an involuntary muscle, meaning you can move it on its own and you don't really have to think about it. Breathing comes naturally. So just as a pulse check, what is the main function or job of the respiratory system? Write it in now. Let's go ahead and take a look at the structure, or the things that make up the respiratory system. First is the nasal cavity. The nasal cavity is located inside of your nose, and it's the part that warms, moistens, and filters the air. So this main area right here is your nasal cavity. As you breathe in oxygen from your nose or from your mouth, it gets filtered by the nasal cavity. So inside of your nose there are tiny hairs, as well as there's mucus or snot. And the reason that you have that is so that you will be able to clean the air before it passes down into your lungs. You want to clean the air of any pollutions, maybe smoke or anything else that you wouldn't want inside of your body, including dirt too. Which means, yes, snot or mucus does in fact have a purpose. And its purpose is to make sure that the air that goes into your body is in fact clean before it reaches into your lungs. So all the dirt and all the nasty stuff gets trapped in here before it goes down into the rest of your respiratory system. Now the next part is called the trachea. The trachea is this long highway that connects your nasal cavity, which is here, to your lungs. So air enters through your nasal cavity and goes down what we also call your windpipe. So sometimes you'll hear people refer to your trachea as your windpipe. It's the same thing, but it's the highway to the lungs. You can see it in here. Go ahead and make sure that this part is labeled into your notes now. Now, after it passes through the trachea, it goes to the lungs. The lungs contain tiny air sacs where air is actually exchanged. And here by air, I'm meaning oxygen and carbon dioxide. So oxygen and carbon dioxide is what's exchanged here. Let's take a look at what your lungs look like. So this is the inside of lungs that have been preserved, of human lungs. The tiny sacs that you see here, so you see as it branches off, so this part would be the trachea. This is the top of the trachea. And then these small things that are branching off here, it's actually where the gas is exchanged. So you'll see that oxygen and carbon dioxide both go in and out of these tiny little particles that are on the little branches inside of the lungs. These branches are called alveoli. And alveoli are tiny air sacs that put the oxygen back into the bloodstream and give up carbon dioxide. So it's those small little branches that were inside. As you notice this on your notes, I'm wanting to point exactly to the little small areas that you see here and not to the entire lungs. So they are the tiny air sacs that put oxygen into the bloodstream. Now the alveoli is seen up close here. You'll notice that the alveoli is surrounded by capillaries. That is because the oxygen is going to go into your bloodstream so that it can be carried to the rest of your body. Just as I noted in the brain pop clip, the alveoli are surrounded by tiny capillaries that are only about 1 cell thick. It's very, very thin so that oxygen can pass through and go into the bloodstream here. So you'll see that this is where the alveoli is located and that it's going into the bloodstream so that it can go to the rest of your body. Finally, there's a large muscle at the bottom of your lungs called the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle that expands and contracts to allow breathing to take place. Go ahead and make sure this is written into your notes now. Here's an example of what I mean by the diaphragm. As you can see that when it contracts, the lungs get smaller and air goes out. And then when it relaxes, the lungs get bigger and air is taken in. This process is what allows breathing to take place. So in this image that you see here, the diaphragm would be located right underneath, and it's what allows the lungs to both expand and contract so that you can inhale, breathe in, and exhale, breathe out. Let's put it all together. So in this model here, you can see that oxygen is taken in through the mouth. It goes into the nasal cavity, down the trachea, which is the highway to the lungs. Once it gets inside of the lungs, the alveoli will take the oxygen and transfer it into the bloodstream. All this is happening while the diaphragm that's located underneath the lungs both expands and contracts so that the lungs can allow you to inhale and exhale. You guys are going to go ahead and move on to the practice onto the next page. Raise your hand if you have any questions. Good luck.